Start with Why is not a slogan book. Start with Why is not a pitch book. Start with Why is not some motivational poster you just slap on a wall. Welcome to the explainer of this book. Today, we are going to look very closely at Start with Why by Simon Sinek. We need to understand why highly competent people just like you, often hit a biological boundary of silence. We're looking at a very specific biological reality here, diagnosing a pain that so many performers face. You know the feeling. Your work is excellent, but your resonance with the organism across from you is just thin. You're not doing anything wrong, you're just miscalibrated.
Okay, let's just dive right in with an uncomfortable truth. You keep feeding proof to a room that rejects you before thought even begins. That is the hard part, isn't it? The presentation you made might be completely flawless. The offer is sound. The resume shines perfectly, but it just bounces off. You're sitting there, watching the room nod politely, knowing full well that true connection hasn't happened. The organism hasn't let you in.
Act 1. The room rejects proof. So we really need to diagnose this sequence error. Look, this is not a marketing failure. Actually, scratch that. It is purely a biological failure. As a competent creator, you're likely feeling starved by what looks like a lack of attention in a world of endless notifications and crowded inboxes. Every interaction feels totally underfed. But here is what's really happening. You are doubling your proof, but your underlying cause remains entirely unsignaled. You are trying to solve a biological selection problem with more data.
And this perfectly illustrates the biological reality of your audience. Your audience's mind acts exactly like a biological cell membrane. It relies on a process of biological uptake. Simon Sinek explains this through human biology. The neocortex handles rational thought and language, sure, but the limbic brain, the older, deeper part of the brain, controls feelings, trust, and literally all human behavior, including decision-making. And here's the catch. The limbic brain has absolutely no capacity for language. It filters incoming signals for safety, meaning, and group fit, way before it ever weighs your facts. It is a biological filter that metabolizes meaning before facts are ever allowed inside. That feeling of scarcity you have, it's often just a signal leak, not a lack of attention. The mind does not digest every signal. It selects first, it metabolizes later.
Simon Sinek names this wound with such plain force in this book. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Now, you already know this in private, don't you? When you are the one choosing, you trust a living pulse over a sterile list of facts. Look at how Sinek illustrates this with Apple. If Apple behaved like a normal organism, they'd say, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use. Want to buy one? That's just proof. It's uninspiring. It bounces off the membrane. Instead, Apple signals from the inside out. They say, everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? See, you instinctively look for the living reason behind the work. And yet, when the pressure rises on you, when you are the one having to perform, you fall back on the trusted habit. More features, more metrics, more proof, more polish. Now, what's really fascinating is that this is exactly where Up Go Wise enters the picture. Not as a lesson, but as a clean cut through that trusted habit. Because proof actually grows weaker when you add volume without a pulse. It acts almost like an overwhelming pathogen, and the mind's immune system just shuts it out. A person can grasp your what entirely and still feel absolutely no pull. And listen, that is not stupidity on their part. That is simply biology doing its protective work.
Let's move to Act 2, the worship of evidence. This same pattern we've been talking about now wears a sharper face. It sounds so adult. It sounds highly trained. It sounds almost ethical to rely strictly on the data, doesn't it?
You might be sitting there right now quietly defending your method thinking, my results already prove the point. The why is just decoration. Serious people care about evidence. Let's just pause on that for a second. I know, I wish this weren't true, but look at where it leads. That voice inside you is not foolish. It is just trying to protect you from fluff. But a habit of leading with evidence can actually starve the very organism you're trying to feed. Evidence answers the question, can it work? Cause answers the question, why should this matter here, right now? If the cause is absent, your pristine, perfect proof just floats uselessly outside the cell membrane. It may be entirely true, but it is not admitted.
So the crucial point here is this narrow, totally miscalibrated biological spectrum you face. What first speed versus why first selection. At one end, you state the what fast. People recognize it quickly, and then they forget you just as fast. At the other end, you state the why first. It takes a little longer, but then people sort themselves with undeniable force. Both are symptoms of the same misunderstanding. You are confusing mere recognition with true resonance. Recognition is cheap, resonance is an organism actually allowing your signal inside.
Let's test this in the real world. Imagine your best proof stays the exact same. Only the first sentence changes. Version 1, we help teams improve retention by 20%. Version 2, we believe people stay where their effort has meaning. Version 1 sounds like every automated, lifeless message we all immediately delete, doesn't it? Notice what happens with version 2. The proof didn't shrink, it just changed place in the sequence. Now it serves a pulse. When proof changes place to serve a cause, it finally creates biological uptake. The filter opens.
Which brings us to Act 3. Cause is not a caption. This book is not asking you to sound noble or to put on a performance of sincerity. It's asking you to stop fighting the natural order of biological uptake. Meaning must be legible to pass through the cell membrane of the mind. It is not an ornament you just tack on at the end. It is the entry point.
But the false belief returns, this time with a much more refined mask. I know my why. I just do not need to say it out loud. The work should speak for itself. I know that sentence feels remarkably clean and dignified, but look at the heavy demand it places on the organism sitting across from you. It asks strangers to magically infer your living cause from your raw, unfiltered output. Some few might, most absolutely will not. They are entirely too busy filtering their own incoming signals to do that interpretive work for you.
Look across to biology again. In the body, a signal must be expressed to matter. Unexpressed code does not guide behavior. It just stays latent. It cannot coordinate action. This connects directly to what Sinek calls the celery test in this book. If you go to the supermarket and you buy celery, M&Ms, Oreos, and rice milk, no one standing in line can tell what you believe in. Your underlying code is latent. It's a mess of signals. But if your why is to always be healthy and you only buy the celery and the rice milk, your cause is perfectly legible. Your decisions physically align with your cause. This is the advanced paradox held in this book. A cause can be deeply, genuinely real and still fail completely to travel if it remains unsignaled. UpGoWise views self-mastery as signal hygiene. You have to stop asking raw output to do the interpretive work. The cell does not become less alive by showing what it admits. Its boundary is exactly what gives it force.
And this leads us into the heavy silence of Act 4. Competence becomes your camouflage. Because you may not be unclear at all. You may be unsignaled because your very polish, your incredibly high competence, is hiding the human signal. Competence can actually make selection harder because it completely blurs the pulse.
You can refine your offer until absolutely no risk remains. You can edit the sentence until no human smell remains. And then nobody can reject you cleanly, sure, but nobody can join you fully either. You face this dilemma. Hide motive to sound rigorous versus state motive and risk judgment. Both are symptoms of the same misunderstanding. Think about Sinek's story of Samuel Pierpont Langley versus the Wright brothers. Langley had everything we think we need. Massive government funding, the best minds of the day, total market polish. He had the perfect camouflage of ultimate competence, but he had no pulse, no cause beyond getting rich and famous. The Wright brothers, they had no money, no connections, but they had a cause. They believed if they could figure out this flying machine, it would change the entire world. They stated their motive and risked everything. Sterile, bloodless acceptance doesn't sustain loyalty. It literally only delays the moment you are forgotten.
So let's replace the question entirely. Stop asking the room, will they approve? Look at your work, look at your output, and ask yourself, can they tell what this organism lives for? Can they feel the pulse? If your work is a living thing, does it have a readable signal?
And here is the quiet, profound mercy of this whole biological framework. The room was not rejecting your proof. It was rejecting the missing pulse before the proof. That is exactly why your exhausting cycle of earning credibility and spending it way too fast just keeps happening. You were feeding facts to a biological filter that was desperately asking for a cause. It is not a moral failure on your part, I promise you. It is simply a sequence error.
Let's fix that sequence in Act 5. Cause selects the proof. We need a much cleaner order to stop this signal leak. You do not need a louder personality. You just need alignment with the way the mind naturally functions.
The clean order of biological uptake is this. Number 1, cause first. Number 2, method second. Number 3, proof third. This clean order maps perfectly to what Simon Sinek calls the golden circle. Cause first is your why. Method second is your how. Proof third is your what. And we do this not because proof is weak. We do it because proof needs a living cause to successfully enter the cell. Proof without cause asks the viewer to do two massive jobs at once: judge the analytical claim and invent the emotional reason it matters. Most won't do both because their own biological environments are already way too loud. They sort fast, tag you as a competent but forgettable organism, and move on.
So what would your next sentence become if it had to name the living reason first? Not the polished brand line, not the corporate claim, the rough living reason. UpGoWise is about exactly this kind of inner order. Self-mastery starts when the mind finally stops mistaking polish for truth. Let the answer sting a little when you realize how much you've been hiding. A sting is not proof of failure, it is contact. Continue the internal transformation at upgowise.com.
The repair here is smaller than you think, but it is much harder to execute consistently. Name the cause before the proof. Before the metric, name the human stake. Before the offer, name the underlying belief. Before the resume, name the service. At the very point of first contact, give them the signal.
'Cause selects proof?
Before you explain your work, if the first sentence proves competence, that is your signal to state the cause instead.